Hello and welcome to the SportsPro Podcast. Yeehaw and hot diggity, it's an American Major League special. We'll be looking at why the value of NFL franchises continue to rise. Is there a ceiling in sight, or will teams continue to be worth more than the GDP of hastily checked Wikipedia, Montenegro, Barbados or Fiji? We'll get stuck into the recent sales of the Lakers and Celtics and what they mean for the NBA, assess the broadcast state of play across multiple leagues, and ask why US sports properties are looking overseas for growth. There's also the quiz no one asked for, the winner of our annual sports day is revealed, and that's the SportsPro Podcast, the show breaking down the stories shaping sport. I'm joined once again by SportsPro technology editor Steve McCaskill. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Ed.
SportsPro head of editorial Sam Carp. Hello, Sam.
Hi, Ed.
And feeling refreshed and tax-free from his time in the Swiss Alps, it's SportsPro reporter Josh Sim. Hello, Josh.
Hello, Ed. Nice to be back.
Just in case HMRC are listening, you do pay your taxes, don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Good to hear. There's a wry smile there.
Fingers crossed as well.
Yeah. Could be your last appearance on the pod. How was your time off?
It was good. It's nice to get away, do some hiking. I think I'm the second SportsPro pod member to have had a Mac raclette post activity, which is good.
Can I just say, as a McCaskill, it's a raclette. There is no A in there.
Did it live up to the hype that Steve gave it?
Much like Steve, I actually can't remember. I had it. It was the first thing I had post hike, so I actually don't remember. It's kind of it's like
Just completely delirious.
Yeah, all I remember was the Swiss beef was excellent. But in terms of the raclette cheese, I actually don't remember much of it. I was just more happy to have something that didn't feel like school food.
What was your average step count on your hikes?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
Yeah, how many sort of calories you burn? How many Swiss raclettes did you burn per day?
Raclettes. I actually don't know. I can't remember, but it was like 5 hours back and forth of hiking. So I don't know what the equivalent is.
I'd take 5 minutes at this stage, but yeah, no, fair enough. Well, it's good to have you back. And what is also back is the National Hand-Egg League, better known as the NFL. Forbes, as they do every year, release their annual franchise valuations in the build-up to the new season, and there are some quite eye-watering numbers in there. The Dallas Cowboys are top for the 19th straight year with a valuation of $13 billion, and the average value of a team has risen 25% year over year to $7.1 billion. I suppose one thing those valuations do illustrate is the financial dominance of the NFL compared to other US major leagues. Like the average value of an NBA franchise is about $4.4 billion, I believe. Josh, I'm going to come to you first. What are the driving factors behind these rising valuations? And even by NFL standards, should we be surprised by how much they're increasing?
They have the most valuable media rights deals of any sports property. I think it's $12 billion each year. And as the NFL keep finding ways to add to that, you've seen how much they've carved out games for Netflix, for example. So you have that going up, and obviously we're recording this after the first week of games. Their viewership for the opening week was like among the best it's had in recent years. Sponsorship revenues are also up. Like it seems like they continue to find a way to improve on their previous year in terms of finances and revenues. It's for owners and I imagine investors, it's a very much safer play in terms of investment, knowing that you're going to get pretty strong. You're going to pay a very high price to enter it, but you're going to get a pretty strong return off the back of it as well.
I think just to jump in, I think like another thing driving those valuation increases this year in particular, you mentioned there, Ed, like the average value went up 25%. If you look at 2024, it went up 11%, 14% the year before that. And kind of one of the big differences over the past 12 months is the change to ownership rules and allowing in private equity, which basically has just created a lot more liquidity for the owners, I guess. So previously, like a lot of the value of these NFL franchises, like the Cowboys, for example, or whoever else it might be, like it was trapped in the franchises, and the value was just there. And any owner wanting to kind of generate some cash from that asset either had to, sell the franchise in full or look to sell a minority stake. But there weren't that many willing buyers of minority stake because it's a passive ownership stake. So why would anyone really want that? But then with private equity coming in, that's exactly what they want. All they really want is an asset that's going to appreciate in value, which is what the NFL offers. So I think by opening up to that institutional investment, they've basically made NFL franchises an even more attractive proposition than they were before. They've created a little bit more, I guess, competition for those minority stakes. And you can just sort of see it in some of the recent deals that have been done. I think we covered a story recently that the Giants are selling a minority stake at a $10 billion valuation. That's not a private equity deal, but just kind of speaks to the impact that that's having. I think Arctos have done a couple of deals already. I think the Bills, Chargers, and the Dolphins are the ones who have done deals so far as part of that. And yeah, all those valuations have been pretty significant. So I think that's quite an important driver of the valuations this year.
Steve, I'm going to take a very narrow-minded view on this, as is my right. But getting return on investment on an NFL franchise, if you're a minority stakeholder, that must be like shooting fish in a barrel, isn't it? Or is it not as simple as that?
I think it's been said it's a fairly safe investment given the broadcast deals, the other income that comes both centrally and per team. Thanks to the Green Bay Packers being the greatest team in all the league, obviously, being a public
Go
company.
Eagles.
Okay, going to ignore that. We get some insight into how much revenue is being generated centrally. So to get a fraction of what is basically a cash cow is going to be extremely attractive to an institutional investor just seeking guaranteed returns. They're as close to blue chip sporting assets that you can get. There's no fear of promotion or relegation. Wages are capped, as is customary in American sport. There's obviously scarcity as well. There's 32 franchises. All have been selected based on the attractiveness of their market. Sure, there's a couple that I think would like to, or people would like to see in bigger markets. I'm looking at you, Buffalo, and to be honest, Green Bay, although I think there is a halo effect from Green Bay as well in terms of the narrative of the league. It just seems like, to borrow a phrase from another US-centric sport, it's a slam dunk. And just to build on Sam's point before, opening up to institutional investment, I think, was a necessity because there's only a small select group of people who can actually afford NFL franchises, and that was before this increase in valuation that has been driven by institutional investment. So again, getting that liquidity was really important, and also it's just there is probably nothing else that's as sure a bet in sport as having a part of an NFL franchise. No one sees it going away anytime soon or having any serious challenge.
Well, speaking of expensive franchises, over in the NBA, the Buss family is selling the LA Lakers to Mark Walter at a record sports team valuation of $10 billion. The $6.1 billion sale of the Boston Celtics is also done. Sam, what do these valuations say about the continued business growth of the NBA?
I think it says a lot about the continued business growth of the NBA, but again, just kind of, I think a lot of the things that Steve just referenced apply in the NBA as well in terms of, growing media rights, the scarcity element. They also allow private equity investment in the NBA and to a greater extent actually than the NFL, which is perhaps why we haven't actually seen quite as many deals in the NFL just yet. It'll be interesting to see if they ever raise that 10% limit that they have at the moment, which is the lowest of all the major leagues, I think I'm right in saying. But yeah, I guess the Celtics and the Lakers in particular are two very interesting cases because they're two of the biggest franchises in the NBA, so we're always going to attract two of the biggest price tags. I think the sale of the Celtics in particular was quite opportunistic by Whit Grausbeck in that he did it at the time, immediately after winning a championship at a point when the value of the franchise was going to be the highest. And he got in 2002 for $360 million, just over 20 years later. I can't do that math. If anyone can do that math on behalf of me, for that $6.1 billion valuation. But, again, I think that speaks to, as we were saying, the continued growth of the NBA. They've just done this massive media rights deal that we'll come on to. So again, another attractive time to probably cash in an investment if you're an owner ahead of those deals coming in. But they're probably running into a similar territory now as the NFL in that you're suddenly limiting the sort of like number of people who can actually buy one of these franchises now. when the Commanders in the NFL sold a couple of years ago, there were about 20 limited partners alongside Josh Harris to fund it. You look at the Celtics, obviously Bill Chisholm is the sort of the one leading that, the headline figure, but there's sort of 8 or 9 other investors alongside him, including Sixth Street. So yeah, as this all goes up, it's kind of interesting to see that the pool of investors who can actually buy into these franchises narrows quite a lot.
Yeah, you mentioned the NBA rights deal. It's going to be the first season of its 11-year domestic broadcast deal with Amazon and ESPN and NBC, reportedly worth $76 billion. We could comfortably fill a whole episode just talking about those contracts, but Steve and Josh, I'm going to let you fight over this one. But I guess some of the main questions that spring to mind with the NBA rights is, I guess, what does the deal mean for the US media market? How's the WNBA going to be affected? And I suppose what's next for TNT Sports?
Answer all of them answer all of those questions in 1 minute.
We need the countdown clock.
I mean, to see the transition from NFL, the NFL, I mean, the US is a very diverse sports market. It's a very large sports market, but even so, the NFL is the biggest fish. It's in a league of its own, and below that, you're looking at college football and now the NBA in a sort of a secondary place behind that. The new broadcast deal reflects that. It reflects how important live sport is in the US media market, because it's the only thing that can guarantee live audiences. And that's why everyone's competing over the NFL, why everyone's so keen to have these carve-out packages. But also the NBA is now growing in national prominence. It's probably got more immediate growth potential than the NFL, just because of it's coming from a lower starting point. So that's why it's been able to get such a large deal. In terms of what it means for league, again, more national prominence. It's going to be on streaming platforms. It's going to be on network television for the first. Well, I mean, it's been on ABC, more ad hoc basis for a few years, but it's going to ABC and NBC moving forward. If we're looking at why they've gone for that, NBC again wants to tap into this growing fandom, this relatively youthful fandom, which is why it's gone for streaming games. Again, so is Amazon Prime. And with regards to TNT Sport, I mean, that was its flagship sports property, but it couldn't give that same breadth of coverage. It couldn't give the network coverage. It couldn't immediately attract that younger audience. Its streaming proposition isn't quite as fleshed out from a sporting perspective. And we've heard this week, David Zaslav, I mean, Warner Brothers Discovery is splitting into two different companies next year, one of which will have the cable network business, so TNT Sports, which will be separate from the streaming operations. So he said basically we're less reliant on sports. So that's been the fallout there. Josh, I mean, I'll let you chip on your thoughts and how it affects the WNBA.
I mean, I feel like the student that's done minimal work and is now going to get an A+ on the group paper too. No,
Don't hate the system, man. But play the hand you dealt.
That's how we all got here.
Yeah, exactly. The WNBA, I think they're getting $200 million a season now with ESPN, Amazon, and NBC all going to be broadcasting games. They're obviously the WNBA have also been able to negotiate deals of their own. We've seen it with CBS and with Scripps' Sports' Ion, so they can earn additional media revenue through that. So, but I think just having those games sort of promoted by the same broadcasters who are obviously promoting the NBA and allowing for cross promotion, and you see that more of those networks are, especially ESPN, are putting more effort, more programming into women's sports, women's basketball. I think that's going to help. The only other thing I was going to mention was that with Amazon and ESPN in particular, they've taken on rights to international markets as well for the NBA, and I think that given the growing presence of obviously international players, I think now they've changed the NBA All-Star format to have an international team against 2 US teams, so showing sort of how many international stars are now in the NBA, and giving those rights to certain markets to Amazon and ESPN sort of speaks to the league's growing appeal around the world, not just the US. And I imagine that played a factor in terms of the revenue, the huge revenue as well.
Switching back to the NFL briefly, it's agreed to sell its media division to ESPN in a deal that gives the league a 10% stake in the broadcaster. Sam, why have they joined forces?
Plenty of reasons. I think for ESPN,
I'll give you more than a minute.
Yeah. Well, I'd encourage everyone to read Steve McCaskill's excellent explainer on on the sportspro.com website, which I did do, so I'm about to repeat. But no, I think there's obviously several reasons. I think for ESPN, which is extremely important for them, and I think, getting into closer business with the NFL sort of, it doesn't guarantee anything, but it can pretty much ensure that it's going to be on the NFL's rotation for the foreseeable future. And, maybe perhaps the NFL will look a little bit more favourably on ESPN and for things around like scheduling and stuff like that. Although interesting to point out that the NFL did have equity in Sport Radar, and then ended up doing a deal with Genius Sports, I think, a few years later, which is kind of an interesting side note. But then if you look at the reason why like the NFL would want to do it as well, it's just kind of, that's another thing that's going to grow those valuations over time as well. I think just having a 10% stake in, the biggest sports broadcaster in the US, it kind of seems like a no-brainer from that perspective, to be honest. But I think, yeah, Steve can probably shed a little bit more light on this one.
If you're up for it, Steve.
Thought you never ask.
I'm totally unprepared.
Jazz flute. The thing about, we talked about how dominant the NFL is in the US media market. I think nothing shows that more by just how willing broadcasters are to take any part of it, whether it's live games, whether it's shoulder content, whatever they can get their hands on. I mean, ESPN, it's hard to think about it now, but it was struggling for legitimacy when it first launched. Everyone thought it was a stupid idea, but it was keen to get any part of the NFL it could, so we started broadcasting the draft, and it's helped turn it into this major thing. And the NFL can be a kingmaker in terms of broadcasters. It decides the fates of various broadcasters in the market. This deal, again, as Sam says, means that it cements ESPN's position as a rights owner. It's very unlikely. It was probably very unlikely to be overlooked anyway.
It'd be funny if it was
Very funny. I can't imagine that they've devalued their 10% stake like that. But it's also true that ESPN and NFL's relationship wasn't in such a great place a couple of years ago. It was getting really bad selections. That relationship has been repaired to the point where the two are now actually in business together. And again, the NFL gets a 10% stake in any growth that ESPN is going to enjoy as a result of going full streaming. And the other thing I would say is that the assets that ESPN have acquired aren't really the most attractive in isolation. I mean, NFL Network is a cable network. There's also various other media assets, but as part of a wider product like ESPN D2C service, they suddenly do become a bit more. They become, you get live games on Monday Night Football, you get additional NFL Network games, you get also the shoulder programming. And again, the ESPN just wants as much NFL content as possible when it's going to market with its new proposition.
Briefly, who wants to tell me the latest between what's going on between ESPN and MLB securing new media deals to replace the contracts it's forfeiting? I feel like updates of that are trickling in fairly regularly, and it's difficult to keep track. Who's been keeping the finger on the pulse more than I have? Probably all of you, but what's the latest?
Well, by the time this gets published, I think we might even have a deal. Rob Manfred said not long ago that a deal's in the offing. I think they spent a lot of their All-Star break, wasn't it, having conversations with broadcasters, and weirdly, ESPN could be back in the picture. I think they've sort of like revived talks, and maybe that would be a obviously cut price deal compared to what was there before, which is why they kind of wanted to walk away from the existing one. But I think I'm trying to remember who else was involved in the conversations. I think NBC was hovering around it.
NBC, Apple TV have also been linked, but then they've also been linked with losing their entire package. So there's a lot of speculation out there.
Let's look at the NHL actually before we wrap up part one. It's reportedly set a $2 billion fee for any future expansion team, but it has agreed a new 12-year, $7.7 billion rights extension in Canada with Rogers Communications from 2026. That's US dollars, sorry, to clarify. The NHL, we know it's the undisputed number one property in the Canadian market. Josh, it must be buzzing. It secured what we've been told is a twofold increase on its previous deal. Should we sort of temper that excitement, given the Canadian dollar and economy is going to be squeezed by tariffs from the US? How deeply can we look
I'm
into
not
that?
an economic expert, so I don't know what the tariffs are going to do for the NHL necessarily, but no, it's a massive deal. Obviously, it's you only have to look at how popular and how big the NHL's recent Four Nations face-off event in terms of how much that sort of galvanized the country, and viewership for ice hockey went up in a way that we haven't seen recently. Yeah, it's a huge deal with Rogers, obviously a longtime partner, and yeah, it safeguards their sort of financial future. Obviously, they have a new CBA that's come into play. I think salaries are going up. It just safeguards their future for the long haul, and it comes ahead of their talks for their next US deal, which I think will start in the next couple of years or so.
We'll take a break, but before we do, it's not just the new NFL, NBA and NHL seasons that are upon us. SportsPro's annual Sports Day has taken place, and while it is yet to secure a broadcast partner, we are open to offers. I can confirm that Josh's team secured victory this year. All that hard training and hiking in the Swiss Alps has paid off for you, and this is what you had to say about it.
Where are we? The home of sport, aka Battersea Park. There was a running event. There was like a Hungry Hippos. I'm not familiar with Hungry Hippos. Hungry Hippo style events. A balancing a sack on the head race. There was a various egg and spoon. Yeah, cat throwing eggs. That feels like most of it. I was on the winning team. It was a team effort. I played a small part. It was part of the winning team. Bluntly, I know I'm good at it, so there's no stress. To my fellow colleagues and anyone else listening, watching, better luck next time. Just got beaten by the better team, really, so tough luck.
Welcome to part 2 of the SportsPro Podcast. We've all heard of a bad loser, but I think Josh might be what you call a bad winner.
Wow, that's strong. I take that personally. Through the magic of editing, I actually can't remember the questions I was asked. So
I don't remember eating a Swiss raclette either.
No, I know. It's
you all right?
It's all adrenaline. It's all adrenaline. It's all the post-physical activity adrenaline that takes over my brain, essentially.
Well, it seems to be working, so you have to. Fair enough. Now,
Missed you at Sports Day, Ed, by the way. Very. I can't remember the last one that you did appear at, but
I was there at last year's.
oh really? Okay. Well, there you
Obviously,
go.
made quite an impression.
Officiating.
No, because that's after I'd had the first surgery that had worked.
Okay, there we go. We won't spend too much longer on the injury because well, that's another podcast.
That's our 3.
Yeah.
Part knee, more like. That won't make Dano cut that out. Anyway, gents, the unnecessary quiz actually has a purpose this time because it'll allow us to segue seamlessly into our next topic. We're going to be looking at why US sports leagues are increasingly casting their eye overseas for growth. So the question for this episode is, what year was the first NBA regular season game played in Europe, and can you name the 2 teams? I'm going to go round.
First NBA regular season game.
Played in Europe. Don't need to give me the exact date, just give me the year. And
Okay, I might
2
go.
teams.
I'm worried I'm going to be way off, but I'll go 2010.
Care to hazard a guess for the teams? Or should we count that bit?
Not really. Okay, I'll go. Just going to guess that they were East Coast teams, so I'll just go Celtics and the Heat.
Josh?
Oh my goodness. I'll say 2009. I'm going to say the now known as the Brooklyn Nets, probably the New Jersey Nets at that time, and Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, and Steve?
I'm going to go 2017.
Are you sure?
Well,
Germany.
the reason I'm saying that is I think that's the year I went to one.
So you definitely knew one happened in 2017.
So I'm hedging my bets. I can't imagine it's right. I think it was Denver Nuggets and oh goodness me, I was going to say 76ers, but I think that's just me saying the last thing I heard. I will go for the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Okay, Josh is the only one that got something right. So it took place on the 4th of March 2011, which none of you got.
I'm quite pleased with that, though. Like, to be fair, we were pretty close.
Well,
Half a point, surely.
I'll let Dano decide. He's judge, jury, and executioner in this. But it was also the first NBA London game. It was played at the O2 Arena between the Toronto Raptors and, as you correctly said, Josh, the New Jersey Nets, now the Brooklyn Nets. Anyway, that seamless segue. The NBA has staged more than 200 games outside of the US and Canada, and it is now moving ahead on plans for a new European Basketball League with FIBA. Why is it decided now is the right time to do this, Josh?
Well, it's the NBA have been looking at Europe in terms of establishing a new league and division. I mean, obviously, as we've mentioned before, like I said, there's more international basketballers sort of taking prominence, becoming stars for their teams. So there's a growing international appeal to go alongside it. But yeah, we know they're looking at a new Europe division. Reportedly, they'll sell teams in said division for about $500 million, according to reports. And Adam Silver did a tour. I believe he met Keir Starmer in July amongst a tour
Is
of
he a
Europe.
big basketball fan?
He will be if it brings a lot of money.
Yeah, but stop going to Arsenal games.
Yeah.
No, exactly. He met with Adam Silver. He met with Keir Starmer. He's reportedly met with some private equity firms. Redbird, I think, are one. We know Qatar Sports Investments also, the owners of PSG also have been approached or are looking at the possibility of investing or owning an NBA team. I think it's a good way to sort of market the appeal of the NBA ahead of said division. Taking games to Germany and Manchester. I think it's a great showcase rather, for a showpiece league, and will be interesting to see what happens from here.
I appreciate your answer, Josh, but my mind is now wandering to which former British prime ministers you would put in a basketball team. I think you mentioned Keir Starmer.
Probably none. I don't know. I think is this still part of the quiz?
No, it's just the inner workings of my mind. All right, I'm trying to think who would be a good point guard.
You just want me to
Blair might have been all right. Gordon Brown, not sure.
Gordon Brown would have been the
destroyer.
Yeah.
Probably different. Oh yeah, let's not get into this rabbit hole.
We're going down a rabbit hole.
This is serious.
This is not adding much value for your audience. This.
There are alarm bells ringing in the studio. I think producer Dano's about to run in and just rugby tackle me out.
Graphic ready of average heights for the.
There will not be a former prime minister's team in the NBA's league. I don't think so.
I thought Boris was the one that does the rugby tackling.
Let's definitely leave it there. Moving on.
Yeah, I think so. Away from the NBA, we've got. And British prime ministers. We've got the NFL playing regular season games in Brazil, UK, Ireland, Germany, and Spain in 2025. The NHL and Serie A have signed a content partnership for next year's Winter Olympics. American leagues could have looked overseas for growth a long time ago, Sam. Why are so many of them pushing the boat out now?
I don't know if they all could have done. Looks well. Some of them did. The NFL tried to set up a Europe League, and that was a massive failure.
True.
But there's obviously there's several reasons. Obviously, sort of like the evolution of media, I think, is probably a big reason why now makes a lot of sense. Obviously, the biggest motivation really is to grow revenues, and they're kind of. You wouldn't say that they're sort of like capped out from a domestic perspective, as you can sort of see with the growth of the NBA's media rights deals that we've just spoken about, the NFL's as well. But I think from a sponsorship perspective in particular, there's quite a lot of opportunities from looking overseas, and just from a fan growth perspective as well. Slowly but surely, what we've seen over the past sort of 20 years, because of that media piece that I've mentioned, we've seen leagues like the NFL, like the NBA, develop genuine fandom here in Europe in particular, and further afield. Would be wrong just to talk about it and through a European lens, because leagues like the NBA now host games in the Middle East. NFL's going to Australia next year for the first time. There's several reasons in there. I think the interesting thing really is how they're all looking at doing it. The NFL has kind of had to export the sport in a way to grow overseas by bringing games to the UK and whatnot, whereas the NBA is kind of in a slightly different position where it's very much exporting the NBA brand, and it's the way it's going about it now is kind of feels more disruptive, I think, in a way. It's EuroLeague has come out and said in an interview with SportsPro that they feel like it would sort of dilute the market. It would create a lot of confusion, and they've since kind of backtracked on that a little bit and suggested that they'd be open to collaborating with the NBA, and whether that would be a kind of sort of situation where you'd see maybe the EuroLeague season happening, and then you could qualify for the NBA's league that way. But yeah, there's lots of different nuances to it, I think, and the different approaches are quite interesting. I'm not sure if there's one that's better than the other, but I'm still not completely sold on this NBA league, because I think I think basketball in Europe is quite different to, or basketball fandom in Europe anyway is quite different to basketball fandom in North America. You see in the EuroLeague, it's very traditional, very passionate fan bases, and the idea of someone else coming in and taking that over. Not saying that's necessarily what's going to happen, but it feels like it's one route out of this. I'm not sure how receptive they'd be to that. Whereas obviously the NFL wouldn't have that problem because you're kind of bringing a new sport to the market anyway. But I think that's part of what's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Steve.
No, I think evolution of media certainly. I mean, a friend of mine, his family ran a VHS postal service for games from North America. So in the era before the internet, you obviously would avoid the score quite easily, and you'd watch it on the VHS and later DVD. You can now stream pretty much anything you want, or any part of the world. Again, I think NFL is as Sam says, a completely different case. There's nothing like it outside of the US. There's nothing quite such a visual spectacle of. To quote a WWE commentator, the sea of humanity. In rugby, even is probably the closest thing, but even that's just very different. Just picking up the points about NBA, the NBA brand is very strong, even in markets, but there isn't a strong basketball culture. I mean, you look at the UK, which we're constantly told has really strong grassroots potential. It's never been commercialized effectively, or the professional league created in a proper manner, but people are aware of the NBA, and I think in a market like the UK, you create an NBA Europe franchise, that would be successful, or has a good chance of success. Again, if you look at Greece, or you look at Serbia, where there are these long-established basketball cultures which are more like football audiences. That's going to be the challenge. So I think it's got quite an interesting model. I think it's probably going to have great success in countries where there isn't that established framework or established fan culture. And you have to look at something like the NHL, where yes, the NHL is widely accepted as the world's best ice hockey league, but it's not really made significant inroads in countries with that established fan culture. So places like Sweden, Finland, Switzerland, yes, are aware of the NHL, they're aware of the players, but they still retained. I mean, the attendances are still 10,000, sometimes even closer to 20,000. So it's not a straightforward thing, but I think it's got some things going for it. It's going to be very disruptive, but as Sam says, it's not going to be as straightforward as perhaps it might think.
Here's a quick one for you all. If there was one thing from US sports you'd like to see or not see in Europe, what would it be? Josh, I'm coming to you first.
Oh, wow. I had an answer, and I may change it because I completely
Not
forgot.
is it?
No one's going to hold
I
me
may
to
change it because I've heard someone else's and I go first.
No. Nothing of the sort. I know like UK sports fans quite like their analysis, and they're like, it's very like a regimented programming, but given
Depends who's doing the analysis. Yeah, I'll take the point.
I guess given the amount of like people on social media who then clamor to watch the CBS Champions League pregame show, or like NBA fans overseas who try and find clips of Shaq and Charles on Inside the NBA, I do think there's a space for that kind of show. Who or what? Like, that's a question for you guys. Which panelists would you put on there?
Am I the Kate Abdo of this podcast? I wish.
My uncle, who's from the Northwest, who's lived in America for more than 40 years, hates CBS's coverage of the Champions League, just saying that.
Not sure he's the target audience.
Yeah, probably not.
Was Jimmy Hill back? Probably.
He would love it.
Sorry, should we go?
What part was it? Michael Richards dancing on camera? Was that which part was it?
I love Michael Richards.
Yeah, I think there's a space for that kind of show. Which network or which people would you put on said show? I have no idea, but given that interest on social media, I imagine there could be one that translates well.
If I'm Kate Abdo, are you Thierry Henry, Steve?
I don't want to get that trouble with HR by putting my hand on Josh or Jamie Carragher's leg to my right.
Yeah, no one wants to be the Jamie Carragher of this show, though.
I fancy myself a Mika Richards.
Yeah, fair. I'll give you that. I'll take the Carragher roll. Fine.
Steve, what would you like to see from US sports in Europe?
Catering. I mean, it is improving, as we've seen from Footy Scran and things like that. But the equilibrium between cost and quality at a lot of sporting events in the UK, not necessarily in Europe. Thing in Swiss hockey, you can get my beloved raclette fries. Sensing a theme here, but just there's some terrible food.
Other cheeses are available.
Raclette isn't a cheese; it's a dish. My goodness.
That's the most middle class thing I think I might have ever heard.
It's just the Swiss background coming out. Some people say Swiss cheese. Which one? But I mean, I went to the US, went to baseball, and someone came back with a taco ship, and I was like, I want that. Like, it just, it is expensive for food in the US, and so are the drinks. But I mean, at least you're getting something interesting, something fun, rather than a burnt burger, a microwave pie. Although the pies at Gillingham aren't too bad for a chicken tikka pie. It's like a couple of quid, at least it was. But yeah, I just think diversity of catering, better quality, have some more fun with it. Yeah.
Sam, if you say anything to do with Swiss food, I am going to turn your microphone off.
Okay. What would you want from Swiss sport in what am I going to say? I think you probably also, like, before forgive mine, I think you could extend Steve's out to just the entire fan experience. Like, to be honest, I think American sports teams probably treat their fans a little bit better and create more of an experience around the game than maybe they do here in Europe. The club that I have a season ticket to, I don't think they've updated the concourse in the 25 years that I've been going. So
your club stadium is right by Sainsbury's. You can get a meal deal. Bring that.
Well, yeah, that is the bonus. So if we ever lost that, big part of the match day experience would be lost. But yeah, in terms of what I'd want to bring over, I know it's like going to be almost impossible to create this, but it's aspirational. I'd quite like some sort of draft system in European sport. I know that we don't have the college sort of setup here that they do in the US, which makes that difficult, and you're not going to have clubs willingly putting forward their academy graduates for a draft. But maybe you could do it with something else, whether it's kind of like free agents, players want to be shipped out on loan, maybe just Chelsea's bond squads. That would, I don't know, I just think that would be quite good fun. Maybe in other sports like rugby, for example, it might work. But I just think that would be, I feel like we don't really have anything in those kind of off seasons which generates quite a lot of excitement in the way that you do in American sport with the NFL draft and the NBA draft. We have the preseason tournaments that no one really watches. I just think that would be a fun one to bring to Europe in some way, shape or form.
And we all know allocated fun is the best kind of fun. I think the closest we've kind of had to a draft this year is the Lions when they did their event, although obviously the squad had already been decided, but they did sort of try to draw comparisons with the NFL draft, and you can draw your own conclusions about how effective you thought that was, but that was their attempt at it. But it'd be interesting to see if it can go further. I want to flip this on its head now very quickly. What one thing from European sports would you like or not like to see in the US, Steve?
I mean, I love American sport. I love pretty much all sport, I suppose now. And there's bits I like from both sides on a more serious note. And, I'm not going to say promotion and relegation because that, per se, but there's a lot of towns in the US that aren't represented at the elite level of sport, and they've got really strong sporting cultures. Look at high school football, look at college sports. And so I'd like to see more of like it's to be very hard to implement in practice because of different standards, and there's also safety concerns, but more, I guess, FA Cup style competitions. Look at March Madness, and part of that appeal is because it's almost like an FA Cup of basketball. Yes, college sports are becoming more business-like, but it almost feels like lower league football in the UK almost, in terms of can these smaller schools compete with the massive programs. And I think American sport is much more diverse and much more interesting than the major leagues. But besides minor league baseball, like I said, some high school football, you don't often get to see that, and I think it's not as represented as much as as it is in European sport. We have cup competitions. We do have that pyramid system in a lot of sports. Yes, we do have franchises as well. But yeah, that's probably something I'd like to see.
And for you, Josh?
Kind of think it's being justified at the moment. Better fan chanting. I just think there needs to be
win.
USA. No, I think there just needs to be more creativity. And actually, I was reading today at the time of recording that the San Antonio Spurs NBA team are auditioning fans for a sort of chanting group inspired, I think, by European sports. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama, they're the French phenomenon. So already the Spurs have taken that decision to sort of bring in over that sort of European fan culture to their games. And I think more creative and better fan chants. Although I've never been to a tailgating experience, so if someone wants to invite me, then maybe I'll change my mind.
What's wrong with defense? Defense.
It's up there with Chelsea.
Yeah.
There was a good clip that I saw on X the other day, which was someone was sat behind a gentleman at Yankee Stadium. Is it Yankee? Is it still called Yankee Stadium? New Yankee Stadium. And he gets the whole section going, and all they do is just chant the name of the player until they point back at them and wave. So like went round like all the way the outfielders into like shortstop and first base and third base, and it was I watched the whole thing and they all acknowledged him, but it was pretty painful.
What would you like to see, Sam? Probably more mass-produced European lager in US stadiums?
Oh yeah, now that you've said it, absolutely. No, I think I'd like to see. I don't even know if this is something that's you'd transfer from Europe, because I'd quite like to see like American sport become a bit more accessible. It feels like whenever I go to the US, the price per ticket is quite outrageous, and that's probably still the case to an extent in the Premier League. But if you go a lot further down, you can get tickets for you can get an away ticket for a Premier League game for £30. But this perhaps even speaks to some of the stuff that Steve was saying about like having other towns represented and maybe lower level stuff. But I think just that accessibility piece is one. I think like premium sport in the US is very expensive to attend. And so that's maybe one.
I would like to see Bovril in US sports. If anyone needs a laugh, Google Sylvester Stallone Bovril Everton. It may not travel very well across the pond, but I think it could go down quite well. Steve, do you want to explain what Bovril is for someone who's perhaps not aware of it?
It's a meat-based hot drink that I thought was just on the menu for a joke in a lot of places, but no, it turns out people do actually drink it.
Jack Grealish is a big fan of it.
I mean, I went to I think it was Wimbledon. They had it, and as in AFC Wimbledon, not the All England Lawn Tennis Championship.
Bovril and cream.
Bovril and cream. Oh. I mean, it's not unpleasant. It just feels like one of those things that if it wasn't invented a century ago, it probably wouldn't be invented.
It wouldn't be the worst thing Britain has brought over to the States, I think. Just a reminder before we go, do sign up to the SportsPro daily newsletter to get your daily briefing of all the essential news across the sports industry. Also, do check out the rest of the SportsPro podcast network to hear from our sister shows. And remember, if you want to ask us something, you can get in touch by emailing us on editor@sportspromedia.com. That'll do for today, I think. I'm off to have a nice cup of Bovril. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Ed.
And thank you, Sam.
Cheers, chaps.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope to have you again. Leave us a nice review if you're in the mood. The SportsPro podcast is produced by Dano Ling. Our executive producer is Manny Gill. This episode was recorded at Spotify Studios in London.